the tip I'm giving out. Before you go into an interview, I mentioned undergarments, putting on a new pair of undergarments before you go for an interview. So there's many. Hey everyone, this is Tamika from Fruitful Vision Enterprises. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you are joining us on YouTube, subscribe to my channel, hit that like button. We are going to do many topics just like this one. And it's important that I know that you're there, that you're subscribing, that you're liking the videos. So check out my videos on YouTube. Okay, tonight we are going to talk about mastering the interview. As you know, during this COVID, time, for the past 4 weeks, I've been talking about, listen, how to start a new business, what you should be doing in your downtime. So hopefully you all have, been building your credentials, but now it's time to really talk about the interview process. And, tonight we're not going to talk about how to dress for an interview. This is Girl Chat, how to wear makeup for the interview. We really are going tonight just to focus on the interview questions because that is so important, right? And so in a few minutes, I'm going to introduce who my guest is tonight. But first, let me give you some statistics. There's 21 million people that are on unemployment. Of those 21 million people, many are furloughed. Many will not go back to work because they're coming up with great inventions, they're coming up with great ideas, and so they'll just stop out of the workforce. And what will happen, job openings will start opening up. And so, with that, it is a great time for you to be prepared the questions that will be addressed to you when you go on an interview. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about tonight. I know we don't live in a perfect world. We know there's a lot happening in May 2020 in the news. I'm very sensitive to that. And so I'm conscious that when you go into an interview, people may be having a bad day or, some people might have their own bias, unconscious bias. So, I'm not going to so much talk about that tonight because those are things that can play interview. What we are going to talk about tonight is just making sure you are prepared for the interview. So without further ado, I am going to introduce Natasha Boudry, who is from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Also, she has mentored many people around this topic. So Natasha, welcome to Mastering the Interview. Thank you for participating tonight. Just a little bit of, I know Natasha, right? Everyone should know I know Natasha. She's related to me. And so I always like to put that little disclaimer out there, but it doesn't matter. You still are the master of interviewing. And so that's why you are engaging on this topic. So I want to say, Natasha, if you could say hello to everybody and tell us one fun fact about you, that would be helpful.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Natasha Boudry. As far as, and again, thank you again for having me tonight. I'm very excited. A fun fact about me that people might not know. I used to play the trombone. I have an old trumpet, the old ones, the ones that don't even have the valves, and I can play that too.
So okay, so not only can she interview, but she's also musically talented, and we'll have to say that because some of you don't know about her music, but we'll talk about that on another live stream. So anyway, there is this question, Natasha, that always comes up no matter what interview you go into, who's interviewing you. There's this question that always comes up, and it is, tell me something about yourself. I mean, that is the question that really can stump people. Yeah. And if you don't answer it correctly, your interview can go really downhill. So I want my viewers to know that that's a question that you have to be prepared to know how to answer. If you can't talk about yourself, then who's going to believe in you? So tell me, right, Natasha, tell me about yourself. How would you answer that question?
Well, I would say, well, thanks for that question. That's a great question. My name's Natasha Boudry. I live in the Massachusetts area, and I have about 15 years of banking and finance experience. I transitioned out of that field and went into the human services field where I'm working right now. So I work at the Department of Transitional Assistance as a SNAP supervisor for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And that transition really taught me the type of person that I wanted to help or serve in my career. I was serving, people who with a lot of money in banking. And unfortunately, I wasn't receiving that gratifying feeling at the end of the day that I feel now when I'm helping someone in need or someone who just needs a little bit to get by. So through that transition, I've developed an extremely strong problem solving skill. Because again, you have people coming in every day with different needs, with different wants, different educational backgrounds, different backgrounds in general, different cultures, tradition. So it was like, for me, it was like always something new. It was a good experience to come in and just be able to help people. So through that, I then wanted more. I wanted to now not only help people, but I wanted to help my coworkers. So then I became a case manager. And then from being a clerk to a case manager, I wanted more. Now I wanted to mentor because I just love lifting people up. And I love just extracting those awesome qualities that people don't really even realize that they have, and pushing that to the forefront and just watching them develop. So it was important that I find a career that would allow me to support the people around me, honestly. And that's a key word, to be able to support them honestly. And so that's where I'm at today. I'm helping, I'm mentoring, I'm training, providing support wherever I can, and also maintaining and juggling a household of 3 kids and 2 hens and a dog and a husband. So that's what we all do. That's where it is.
So that was a great answer, because from what I heard from your question, you said, what drew you to be, you were in the middle of a transition from the banking, from the finance to human resources, and you told a story. And I think that when you are answering that question of tell me about yourself, it's important that you say what led you to this industry, and feel free to tell a story of what led you to the industry, because people love to hear stories. They love to hear things that they can identify with. Another thing that Natasha said is she talked a little bit about her skills, right? The skills that she had. She can mentor people. She can supervise people. So when you're speaking about yourself, when someone asks you that question, it's important that you're telling a story of who you are. You're talking about your skills. You're talking about your transition, how you got there. Now, if you're a college student and you might, maybe you just had a few internships, talk about, how you got there from your internships. Maybe you had an internship that you could talk about that you didn't like. So you decided to go away from that industry, right?
Yeah. And it's just that easy. Like I think people really have the mindset that when they're interviewing, they have to be perfect. And what you have to remember, whoever's watching right now, what you have to remember is usually interviews are set up in blocks. So whoever's interviewing is interviewing multiple people. So they're looking for an honest answer. They're looking for just someone who's okay with being a little vulnerable. Now, don't go telling a story that's going to get you emotional, but it's okay to give a little bit of yourself so that you can connect, so that they can now remember you from the other person that gave a cookie cutter answer.
Right. And so if you are just joining us, my name is Tamika Jacques from Fruitful Vision Enterprises, also the author of A Brown Girl's Guide to Employment and Network. Here I am joined with me by Natasha Boudry, who represents the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. If you are on Facebook, shoot us a comment right now. Let me know that you're there. Just say hello so we can know that you're there. Also, Natasha will be taking questions at the end of this broadcast, and also I will be picking names from those that participated in the contest this week. Okay, so next question that you should be prepared for when you go into an interview. Tell me your strengths. What is your strengths that you can bring to the position? Talk about that. Because if you can't, again, talk about yourself, but if you don't know what your strengths are, man, that's going to be a tough interview. You're going to lose people. So talk about your strengths, Natasha. How would you answer that question?
It is. And I would answer it by being confident. And there's a difference between confident and cocky. Okay, so it's okay to talk about your strengths and to be secure
Yes.
in who you are without
Yes.
sounding cocky. Now, and before I answer the question, I also want to make a difference too. Sometimes when you're interviewing, especially in an office where you know the people, so you're going to be interviewing with someone that you may know or that
Yes.
you see every day in the office, and whether it's a friendly hello, they know your work, right?
Yes.
So in the interview, you cannot assume that they know your work. This
Yes.
is clean. They make pretend that they don't know you. This is where you go in and you tell them, even if you know that they know, even if you sat on a project that they led, doesn't matter. You want to say my strengths. Well,
Yes.
let me tell you about my strengths.
Yes.
Yeah, and get excited and pull up the chair. And it's okay. It's okay to, be expressive. It does show that you're confident, right? So let me tell you about my strengths. A lot of people say that having OCD is a bad thing, but I actually embrace my obsessive compulsive, right? I am very meticulous with detail. I like to fine tune things. I like to see, why does it work? Does it work? What if it doesn't work today? How can we make it work? What are the different angles around that? And then I like to further examine that and see, what else, where can we lead for whatever is being implemented for someone else, to take a look at it from a different vantage point. So for me, my strong point is that I have a keen eye and attention to detail for pretty much anything that passes through my hands, because
Right.
I like to be in control of it. I'm learning how to let go of that control by inviting people in and to
Yes.
assist me and to take a look at things from a different vantage point.
Yes.
It's good to incorporate other people, because in doing so, you're still mentoring while leading.
Right. So you just brought out something really in your comments. You said, I'm still learning how to let go, right? And
Mm-hmm.
with that, I'm going to go to my comments for a second, because in the
Okay.
comments, it says, I always hate that question and the weakness question. So shout
Yeah.
out to Cassandra Kobolansky, right? So it says that, and so, but one thing you said, Natasha, which is, could really go off of the comment we just got, was when I asked you to tell me about your strength, you mentioned a little bit of a weakness. I'm learning how to let go,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so you can go back on that if someone after, because usually you all know how the interview goes. They come next. The next question is, what's your, okay, if I ask you about your weakness, it's going to be I'm sorry. If I ask you about your strength, it's going to be
Right.
what's
Hand
your
in hand.
weakness, right? And so for me personally, I don't like telling anyone about my weakness, because that's for me to know and not necessarily for you to know. Because if I say a weakness, then when it comes to talking about, why I should receive the job or why I should not receive the job, you a lot of times you remember the bad parts, right? So I could have this fantastic interview with someone, but they're going to bring up the bad parts. So, think about that, how Natasha just answered the question, so that if I would come back to her and say, so tell me your weakness, she can go back to the conversation and say, well, I said, when I was talking about my strengths, I said I have sometimes a hard problem because of the OCD of letting go. And she can just put it there, and someone might say, well, what do you mean? Well, maybe sometimes the way I supervise somebody, I just want to make sure that the job is completed, but I'm learning how to let
Let it
go.
go.
So, and she can go off of that. And then after that, there's really not more discussion. You really can't, you kind of block somebody. That's why I love the way you answered it, because you block someone really from going further. You can, piggyback off of your last question, and you don't have to go further and talking about any weakness that you might have. Now, with that, Natasha, because we might have some college students on here, I don't want any weaknesses to be, I can't wake up on time, I can't get to work on time, right? She's talking really about her weakness in relation to a job, in relation to, her skills necessarily.
Right.
So
You want to be sure that you answer the question honestly. That for me, I mean, if you know me, I mean, if you give me a task, if you give me an assignment, I'm going to do it. So now,
right.
now when I have to let it go or hand it off, I get a little nervous.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with it? But we're all learning. And for you to show a little bit of vulnerability, not only makes you that much more human, right? But it also lets the interviewer know you're not rehearsed. This isn't a rehearsed question.
Right.
This is as real as it is. This is what I'm learning. And it also provides the interviewer with the understanding that you're coming wanting to learn and grow more with them. If I come in and I know everything, why do they need me? Maybe I'm overqualified. You're lending yourself and you're opening yourself to so many biases that it's not even funny. So just answer the question honestly, and you already know if they're going to ask you what's your strengths, they're going to ask you what's your weakness. So marry the two. Marry the two.
Yeah. So I'm going to take a pause again, because thank you for everyone that is joining us. We are talking about the topic tonight, mastering the interview. And if you have any questions, I would like for those questions really to be asked, and we'll queue them up. As I disclosed that I know Natasha, and so I'm going to ask her a stump question for a second, because I didn't necessarily do this in the beginning. So I'm going to rewind a little bit. But, Miss Natasha, if I was to ask you to tell me something about me, okay, if I was, and I'm relating this to because I didn't ask, tell me something about this company. So it's important that you know who you're interviewing. And I forgot to cover that in the beginning. So if I said, Natasha, tell me something about me being the company, what would you tell me? What could you tell me?
Oh, I would say, okay, well, I know Miss Tamika Jacques is an incredibly talented, strong, driven, unapologetic for what she stands for, career woman who knows exactly what her path is, because she's prayed on it, because she stands on it, and because she walks in it. So, it's very important. I mean, we could go on and on to make.
Yeah. So let me stop you right there. So I just wanted to see if you could answer it. You did. Perfect. Flying colors, 100%. But I had to rewind it because it's important, especially to my college students, that it's okay to ask the question before you go into an interview. Well, who's going to be in the room, who I'm going to interview with, but more importantly, know the company that you're interviewing with. Absolutely. And what they stand for.
Absolutely. Right? You should know your audience. So, I mean, that is so key. So, I have like steps for how to prepare for the interview as well. And one of those, you shouldn't just be, I'm sure we all have a lot of search engines, Indeed and Monster and you name it, right? So a job posting pops up and you're like, oh, I like that, I'm going to apply for it, right? But you didn't do any homework. It is your responsibility to not only research the job, its values, how they treat their employees, their mission statement. You want to make sure that all of that aligns with who you are as a professional. Right. You also have to do the same with the job posting. I can't tell you the amount of times where someone will say, hey, Natasha, I'm thinking of going for this job. Great. Let's read it from top to bottom. That's even happened to me. I've even gone to look for a job, and I got really excited about it. And it was with you. When you read it and you're like, you know what? That has a lot of data. Like, and you're sitting in front of a computer doing a lot of data. And I was like, I glossed right over that one in the job description. You have to know your job, the description, the company. But then when you get that interview letter saying, we'd like to interview you, these are the people that'll be interviewing you. This is your panel. Research. Do all you can. You have to know your audience. You have to know who you're speaking to. You have to. I can't stress it enough. So if I didn't know you and you asked me that question without me even knowing anything about who you are as a person, who you are as a wife, as a mother, as a professional, as a working woman, I mean, as an author, as an entrepreneur, I mean, anything, then I'd be stumped. And right then and there, you have to remember there is someone else who did their homework.
Yes,
So
that's
right at
true.
that moment, you understand when they put their head down and they're writing your answer or your lack of,
Yes.
that's
Yep.
that's it right there.
That's
So
true.
it's very
Yep.
important to know your audience.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And so we have a comment that came from Jesse St. Cyr, just reminding us that in an interview, it's important to reframe weakness as an area for growth and improvement. And transparency is important, but like, Jesse comments, do not overshare.
Right.
So, and she also points out, do not disclose mental or medical conditions as a weakness.
Oh,
And I think that's
absolutely.
definitely important, especially in this world where, we have a lot of social media and we
Yeah.
overshare.
Yes.
And also, to Jesse's point, when she's saying, what you overshare, I just want to say to, someone that has not necessarily, been interviewing for a long time, to my college students that might be listening, it's important that when you do start that job search, that you really do clean up your social media, because depending on the industry you're going into, they will Google you in this day and age. They will Google you. They will go on your Facebook page. They will go into
Absolutely.
your Snapchat, and they will know you, even though you're just meeting them for the first time. But virtually, they will know who you are a lot of times. So
Absolutely.
it's just important that, I just remind you that before you go into an interview, that you really clean up your social media, because we are in this information age where we are oversharing, but some things really should be left, for you and your friends. So I just want
Absolutely.
to throw out, that reminder to everyone that's joining us on this broadcast. So if you're just joining us once again, my name is Tamika Jacques, Fruitful Vision Enterprises. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, hit that like button. I'm also the author of A Brown Girl's Guide to Employment and Networking. Sorry, the camera's a little off there. Brown Girl's
Mhm.
Guide to Employment and Networking. And today the topic is mastering the interview. So I just want to dig a little bit deeper to a question. And again, if you have any questions or comments, please let us know that you're watching. We appreciate all of our viewers. But Natasha, tell me, how would you answer this question?
Okay.
What is a misconception that others have of you, whether it's personal, professional? What's a misconception that others might have of you? And it's important that if questions like this come, that you are ready to answer. So Natasha, tell me, what's a misconception that someone might have of you?
Hmm. I would say that I'm unapproachable. I've
Mm-hmm.
always been the type of person where I try to make sure that my yeses are yeses and that my nos are nos. It's, especially when dealing with the public, when dealing with upper management, even with coworkers or anything, you want to try and eliminate conflict as much as possible. And one way to do that is to just be clear when you talk. When you're talking about what you need, set that expectation. When you're talking
Right.
about what you want, say what you want. When
Yes.
you're sorry about something, apologize. When you're not, I'm sorry, I don't agree. So unfortunately, because of that, as women, when we are strong-willed and when we know exactly what we want and exactly what we don't want, it can be looked at as a negative.
Yes.
And it people will then tend to unfortunately think you're unapproachable. For me, that's what it is. They
Yes.
have thought I'm unapproachable, and then when they get to know me, it's like, oh, you're so nice. But that would be it. That
Sure.
would be the
Okay.
misconception.
So that's a good question. I have to say that, someone had asked me that question, what's a common misconception that others have had, might have of me? And, I have a little bit the same similar answer if I was answering that. A lot of times, because I'm not generally this smiley person or have a
Right?
smile on my face, people think I'm mean. And, that same thing, that I'm not approachable. But when you get to know me, you'll find out I will do anything for you. If
That's
I'm
right.
on your team, I'm on your team,
That's
right?
it.
And so, people will come up to me a year later and say, okay, I have to admit, I judged you a little bit, right? And
Yeah.
so, that's a misconception that people have of me. But it's important that when you're on an interview, that again, you're able to speak about yourself, but
Mhm.
also speak about what others might think of you. And having a misconception
Absolutely.
of someone is not bad. It's just how people might first view you. And as you get on a job, what people might expect of you. But, when you get immersed in culture, they'll
Yeah.
see, who the real person
Right.
is. And I like that question because on an interview, anyone can act perfect. You know what I mean?
That's just
I can
it.
be smiley on an
That's
interview and
it.
I'll, answer the questions. But really, how is it when I get to the job? What happens?
Right. Right.
And
And you
so
could be
we have a
answering that question. You could be answering that question for the person that's across from you. Again,
right.
for when you're working in a small office or in a department where you do connect or you do know of each other, whether you work in an office that has or a department that has different multi offices and such, you might be answering that misconception that they might have of you, or they
Right.
heard of you, or maybe you're answering the question so on point that they're like, oh, this one, she thinks it. So, you're answering it. You're like,
Yeah.
hey, this is what it is. This is the misconception. And you know what?
Right.
That might humble that down a little bit. So
Sure. Yes. So I have a couple more questions that I want to
yeah,
ask you, but I always like to go to my viewers' questions and comments because, the viewers are what make this program every week.
absolutely.
So let's go to Amber. And Amber's question is, how would you answer a question of why you left a job after many years
Mhm.
without being negative? And
Okay.
I can answer that question as well. But Natasha, I will let you answer that question just to repeat it one more time for my viewers. How would you answer a question of why you left a job after many years without being negative? Great question, Amber. Go ahead, Natasha.
Yeah,
I'll let you
and you
answer
know
that
what?
question.
That's a great question, Amber. And you know what? That does get asked. And if it were a matter of the company downsizing or you got
Yeah.
laid off, that's honest, and that's something that they can even research themselves. So I'd answer it honestly when it's those type of things. But now let's say
Yes.
that you left because you guys had a little bit of a difference of opinion. It's okay to spin that and say, I've learned so much with working with XYZ Corporation.
Yes.
It was an invaluable 8 years that I've spent with them. And right now, I'm just ready to take my career to a different level and learn whatever the field is that you're learning. Let's say human services. I'm ready to learn the human services field from a different angle. So this is just the most natural and organic next step for me in my career path.
Yeah.
You want to
Yeah.
always make it. Here's the thing: whether it's a negative reason or not, Amber, right? The fact of the matter is you're leaving because you want something better, which if you
Yes.
just translate it means you're moving
Growth.
on to something
Yes.
better, which might be growth, right? Like you said, Tamika,
Right.
or, like it's a new career step. Or, let's say you were doing banking for X amount of years as I was, and I just found I wasn't fulfilled, like for me, I did the job, I did it well. I owe that company so much because I've learned so much, but I just felt that I needed to take my career into a different level,
Right.
and just learn something new.
Yep. Absolutely. And I think that you just always attributed, like you said, always attributed to growth. What was
Yeah,
my next steps? And just keep it positive, no matter if you did have negative experiences.
right,
During an interview, never talk about a boss that treated you bad. Never talk about a
right,
company that treated you bad. Really don't talk about the negative experiences. Talk about that with family and friends. But when you go in there, just look at it as, I'm going to talk about who I am, and I will tell you about my past job, what I learned.
right.
So you can say, say if it was a small company, I worked for a company of 50 people, and there was not necessarily, because everyone had been in the company for a long time, there was no growth opportunities. So you can always take it to, you can always put the positive on it, should I say.
Yes, yes.
So that was a great question.
And
Thank
it's
you,
a
Amber.
small
And then we
world.
have,
Oh,
yeah,
I'm
right?
just saying, Amber, it's a small world too. I mean,
Yeah.
not nothing. You'd be surprised how the circle comes around, and it would be awful to just say one thing that might be taken badly, and then it just come around. So just leave it. You know what? At the end of the day, whether good or bad, you learn something from the company and the organization. So it's a good thing. All good.
Exactly. And then we have one more question that comes from Denise. What would you say to someone that has been out of the workforce for a long while? Maybe they see from their resume that they had a gap of employment. How would you want someone to address that in an interview? I also can answer that, but how would you answer that?
I would first say, if you've been out of the industry for a very long time, take a moment to get to know you. What you wanted to do then may be completely different than what you want to do now. Sit down, take a look at your resume, and have a real heart-to-heart with what are your wants, what are your needs, what are your expectations of a job. You might sit down, and once you write it down, you look at your expectations and they're completely unrealistic, right? So you might say, you know what? The only way I'm going to get these expectations is if I start my own business. So you may not even be looking to going to work for a department or an organization or a company. You may find, you know what? Let me go and take a look and see about a seed corporation or somewhere where I can invest in myself and start my own business. So I would say it's really important to find what it is that you want to do, like 100%. And when you interview and there is a gap, what's wrong with being honest about that? Yes, I worked telemarketing for 20 years and there were some life moments that came that I needed to sit back and reflect and figure out what I wanted my next move to be, because I know that I wanted my next move to be secure. I wanted to be successful. So I felt it was very important for me to take a minute and get to know who I am today and not who I was back then, so that I can make the next career move a good one that I'll be happy with. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, and I just want to address that a little bit, because in order to get that question, a lot of times it's on, like, people can see the gap in your resume. But I think it's important that if you do stop out of the workforce and as you're searching, for a new job, just remember that there's nothing wrong if you put on your resume volunteer experience. So say if you were stopped out of the workforce for a couple of years, but maybe you were volunteering somewhere, you can put that, on your resume as experience. And that could be something that you can talk about during your interview. Someone asked me this question. I did a workshop and someone said, listen, I had to take care of my mom for 3 years and then she passed away. And so that was, my job. And I said to them, then you need to put on your resume caregiver, and you need to talk about everything that you did during that time. And I remember, because the person that asked me was studying to be a CNA, and I said, how transferable is it that you're studying to be a CNA and you just took care of your mom, So it's just important to really think about what you are doing. A lot of us think like, if it's not the 9 to 5, type job, that I shouldn't put it on my resume, but put that volunteer work on there. Put that work that you did that you necessarily didn't get paid for, and talk about those skills on that resume. It's important. A lot of us think that the resumes and the interview have to be so like 20, 30 years ago, right? But in this day and age, when you have to interview online, like we're doing right now, due to COVID, or when someone sends you questions to answer via video, some companies are doing that. They'll send you the questions, and then you have to record. It's important to be innovative and creative, right? So that's just a way to do that. So another question I have, Natasha, and just for those that are tuning in, I can promise you that I am going to draw names. If you shared my post a few days ago, I'm going to draw names because you are going to get a copy of my book. And so tune in, because I will draw names from that. And also, so my last question that I have for this particular moment is, before I do a drawing, is, tell me the question that I get, and it's so hard to answer when you're on that, that interview is, how do you deal with a difficult person, or how have you dealt with a difficult situation, or how
Mm,
have you dealt, in a job that had a
yeah.
lot of stress. So, you get those questions. It's important to be honest,
Oh,
but
yeah.
again, it's also important not to air negative baggage at the same time that you're talking
Absolutely.
about it, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
how do you answer that? Yeah, how do you answer that question? How to deal with difficult people?
Well, and before I even answer that question, just because I'm sure that those people that are interviewing, right? When you get asked these questions, you feel the need to, let me answer. Let me quick. It's okay to go,
Yes.
can you repeat that question one more time to me? It's okay to get it one more time. I'm not saying to use that. Can you repeat the question one more time a lot? But if it's a tricky one, ask them to repeat it. There's nothing wrong with that. It sends the message that you really care about if you understood the question clearly. And it also serves in dual purpose in giving you a little bit more time to formulate something, right? And then once
Yes.
they ask the question, it's okay to take a minute and go, okay.
Right.
It's all right to do that. It's all right to do that. So to answer your question, there was a moment where I had to deal with a difficult client. The person came in, they were highly agitated and extremely emotional. So the first thing I wanted to do was to remove them from where they were agitated, take them somewhere closed in where we could talk together, make sure that we're on the same level. In other words, don't tell them, have a seat here and I stand. No, we're both going to sit down. We're both going to get eye to
Mm-hmm.
eye, and we're both just going to talk. I'm going to ask, tell me about what is it that had you so upset? How can I help you? Please tell me, what is it that I can do to help
Right.
you? And I'm going to tell you if I can. And if I can't help you the way you want, I'm going to make sure that I help you the best way so that we both get what it is that we need, whether it's information from you that I need and a benefit or assistance that you need. So it's
Right.
important to just come down from where you are. No one starts off a conversation or puts themselves in a position where they want to look in bad light. And I think once we can get that wrapped around our own head, it's not our job to judge.
Yeah.
It's not our job to reprimand, right? So if they're coming in, that's not my job to teach them that what they're doing is wrong. Stick to what the job is, right? So the job is to provide assistance, to help
Yep.
at any capacity, whether it's banking, whether it's telemarketing, whether it's customer service, whether it's human services, whatever it is. There's someone who's in need of whatever it is, and you're the person they're coming to. So at the very bare minimum, just being eye to eye, de-escalating by removing them from where it was that they escalated. Change of scenery helps. And just have a one-on-one conversation with what it is that they need. And,
Right.
and then you go from there. It's okay to go step by step by step. And when they ask you that question, sometimes you don't even have to provide what the end result was. Just them knowing that, you know what, at each step,
Mm-hmm.
we'll assess where we're at, and then
Right.
we'll take it from there. That
Right.
shows that you have problem solving skills, that you're confident in your communication, that you know when to stop and go, oh, you know what? Okay, this is as far as I can go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you wait right here, and I'm going to go
Right.
talk with my boss, and then she can take it over from there, because this is as far as I can go. Do you see what I mean?
Right.
Like, so that's how I would address
Yeah.
it.
So you just went through how you would handle a difficult, situation. If someone asked me that question, I have a little story. But I was working one night, and this is my difficult question story. I was working one night, and my boss was supposed to meet me somewhere, and he got lost, and he was lost. And when he got there, he's immediately screaming at me in front of all these people,
Yeah.
and it was just,
Yeah.
at that moment, how I handled my difficult situation is I chose kindness. I didn't scream back at him. I just, continued on. I had to get my humbleness on. And then I addressed the situation the next day of how I didn't necessarily like the way that he had screamed at me,
Right.
handled the situation, and how I would like to be approached if I'm doing something wrong. For instance, maybe not giving the right directions on how to get somewhere, how we could, make it work so that all tempers would come down.
Yeah.
So I just say give realistic stories when someone asks you how would you handle that difficult question or how have you handled a difficult coworker. Be honest about it, but
Sure.
then address the honesty and then give a solution of what could happen. So I
Absolutely.
just, that's just something that a lot of people get is, how do you handle a difficult situation? Because every job is going to be stressful at some point. And so
It
when
is.
someone asks you that question, it's really the supervisor who's ever interviewing you, just seeing how you would respond in situations. So it's
Right.
always important to say, this is how I responded, make it positive, and this is how it was addressed, as you said.
Right. And not every example that you provide is going to have a happy ending. So
Right.
again,
True.
don't think that the example that you have to give them is like perfect. Like,
Right.
this is what happened, this is what I did,
Right.
and we all walked away giving each other high fives. It doesn't
Right.
always happen like that.
Right.
But just you saying the way I would address it, and lean in. Like I can't stress enough when you're interviewing to just be calm. What's the
Yes.
most that can happen? You're either
Yes.
going to get the job or you're not going to get the job. And at the end, either way, you're going to learn from it, right? Because if you don't get the job, you still follow up. Do you see what I mean? So,
Right.
The setback could be a setup for something better.
Right.
You might not have got the job because they actually, after the interview, they're like, I don't want her for that. I want him or her for that position. So, you have to have that mindset that if you're going, you're just going to get to know the interviewer. You're going to get to know the position and the company. And if it's a good fit, then it's a good fit.
Right. And so I just have a couple of comments, Natasha. Jesse says in the comments, yes, they're trying to understand if you have a process to address the problem. And I think that's a great comment, right? Just be prepared of how you would address a problem, how you would respond. And like Natasha just said, it's not gonna always turn out to be the best situation, but at that moment, under stress, under that, how did you handle yourself? And so I'm going to take just one more question on this segment right now. And then I'm going to transition because Natasha mentioned, what to do the follow up. So I want to talk a little bit about that. But here's a question that comes from Carrie. How would you suggest researching a company and then connecting the info you learned to the value you can provide? Now, that's a great question. So let me just repeat that again, right? How would you suggest researching a company and then connecting the info you learned to the value you can provide? That is the $1 million. That is the best question right there.
And and whoever's asking you that question, really what they're asking you is like, tell us why you want to work here. And your answer, if you did your homework,
yes,
your answer should connect your values with their values, right? Right off the bat, go to the website. There's really no reason why you can't find information on wherever it is that you're looking to work for, right? So go on their website. If it's a firm, go on their firm and find out what they do. Who are they serving? Or where are they serving? Are they all over the world? Are they just in the United States? What is their mission statement? So you learn the mission statement, right? And then you kind of look at what it is that you've determined already. Because if we're following those steps, right, you've already determined what your needs, your wants, your expectations are, what you're willing to sacrifice, what you're not willing to sacrifice, and you're going to marry that. So when they ask you that question, you want to literally regurgitate exactly what their mission statement is, what their values are for their employees, what their goals are for their company, their organization, their department. Because in doing that, they're going to see, oh, you didn't just apply for the job because, whether it be you want more money, you want to change your career, you want to grow with us. We're going to invest in you because you want to invest in us, because we can, that's what I would say, make sure that what it is that you're researching, you've researched it to the point where it's second nature if they asked you a question about their company.
Right.
Who are you helping? Who are
Right.
you serving? You have to know all those questions, because it's within that you're going to get that job. If your
Right.
passion is customer service, you love putting on that headset and adjusting the volume and taking the next call, and like it's a surprise, whatever's next, you let them know.
Right.
Whatever the phone company is, I absolutely am driven by receiving a new call, a new problem, and being able to solve it.
Right.
And your core mission statement says that there's no problem that we can't solve. And
Yes.
so
Great
you
answer.
take bits and pieces of whatever it is that they have as their slogan, their logo, their mission statement, their core value, whatever it is, and it's a good thing to also find out what do they do as far as depositing back into the community. A lot of companies and departments do that. So if you learn a little bit about that too, you can spin that and go, and you know what else? I love being able to donate time to feed the homeless. Or I love going for Toys for Tots and doing XYZ or volunteering time. And I love that your company does that, and that you work hand in hand with XYZ Corp. Whatever it is that they do, you need to learn that, because they have an investment, and it's their company. Right. So if you're trying to get in, they want to make sure that you have their company's interest right there first and foremost. Right. So if you can't even take a minute to learn about the organization or the company or wherever it is that you're trying to apply for, that they're not gonna take you seriously.
Okay. So we are coming down to the end of Girl Chat. This is the longest Girl Chat that I've had, and I knew it would be the longest because interviewing is so important. It's so part of where we are right now, especially with the people that are unemployed, furloughed, looking for a job. And so before we leave and before I do the drawing, I would like everyone, again, hit that like button, hit subscribe to my YouTube channel, Fruitful Vision Enterprises. But I just want to close out with, Natasha, okay, you have this dynamic interview, you're going to get the job, great. You can also have a dynamic interview where you do not get the job, okay? And that's just how it is. So what do you say to someone when they did not get the job? What should they do? And do me a favor, share your own experience of what might have happened to you.
Sure. Absolutely. So the position that I got, I didn't get the first time around. And I'll say this, a lot of times you want to be sure that you're not bitter, especially when it's an internal posting, right? But even if it's an external posting, because remember, if you're bitter, you're going to go back to your own job and be bitter there, right? So don't be bitter, get better, right? That's how I kind of look at it. Find ways to get better. Okay. Let me see what else I could do. But now let's say, as you said, Tamika, what if it was great? What if you absolutely have no idea what more you could have done? Well, after any interview, you always want to send a handwritten thank you, right? I always do. Email, and I've gotten into a little argument with people. They say, "Oh, email's fine." I don't think it is. It's literally too quick. Thank you very much, thank you, and send. It takes a little bit more time to just write. Very simple, 3 sentences, so much. I'm looking forward to hearing back from you. Done. Now you get the letter that says you didn't get the job. Where does it say that you can't contact the person? I've done that before. I've contacted them. Hi, Susie Smith, I interviewed with you 2 weeks ago. And if it's by email, write it on email. I interviewed with you about 2 weeks ago. Thank you again so much for that time. I learned so much about your organization. I understand I did not get the position. However, I would still love to be able to know what I could do to further better myself for the next time there is an available position within your organization. Right there, what you've done is you've let them know, I'm still interested. I'm not going to stop. And I'm going to learn something from this. Who wouldn't
Yes.
want to hire someone with that type of mindset that is not a defeated mindset, but more like a, okay, this is fine. Maybe not now, but there's
Right.
tomorrow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So do you have any, can you share with us a little experience that might have happened to you?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened to me.
Oh, okay, well, there you
That's
go.
exactly what happened to me. So
She
I
gave
didn't
it.
get the job, and
Yeah,
I tapped on the door, and I just said, "Hey, do you have a minute?" And very gracious enough to say that he did. And I just
yeah,
sat with them, and I said, "Thank you again for the
yes,
opportunity. It was good. I learned a lot from that interview. I just wanted to know, do you have any feedback for me? Do you have anything
yes,
that I could apply to the next interview that might
yes,
help me land the position?" And it was funny because what he had said to me was what I had mentioned earlier, when we had talked about making sure that you know your audience. And I had
yes,
said, make sure that even though if you know your audience, that you don't assume that they know everything that you've done. And
right,
that's when we were saying, it's okay to be confident, but not cocky. Well, I always looked at it as, if I oh, and I did this and I did this. And, let me tell you a little bit about a project that I ran. I kind of looked at it as it might be taken as cocky.
right,
And the feedback that I received was, yeah, you talked about what you did, but you wouldn't expound on how you did it
right,
and what was the outcome, because you knew I knew.
right,
You can't do that. That's where they're taking the notes. It wouldn't be fair to the next person that's being interviewed if they filled in the blanks for me.
right,
Right?
right,
So you have to go ahead and you have to tell them everything from start to finish. You know, don't leave anything to their understanding. Assume that they know nothing. Assume they forgot,
right, right.
because
Okay,
you're going in and you have to speak for yourself.
absolutely.
You're going for this because, again, there's always someone who's just as hungry. There's
That's so
always
true.
someone who wants it just as bad as
That's
you.
so true.
So you know what? I'm going to go in there and I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to lean in. I'm going to
Right,
smile. I might, throw in a little joke in here, as long as it's, you can see that it would be received. But
right,
I'm going to go in as confident as I can. And I'm going to let you
right,
know why you should hire me and why I'm an asset to your
right.
company.
Great. Well, there is one more question. I'm just going to take it really quick.
Okay.
The question comes from Amber. Is it bad to bring notes so you don't forget key points, or should you memorize? And, I think that you should bring in notes with your notebook, a nice binder, nice folder. Don't have it, like a manila folder, a file folder, but come in with a nice, binder, a thin one that, you have your notebook in, that you have some questions that you've already prepared, and that when someone's asking you questions, just as Natasha said, it's okay to take a minute to answer a question. At the same time, if I bring a notebook into an interview and I have some questions, I'll write it down. But also, as people are interviewing themselves, I'll just jot down who's who, because sometimes you forget someone's name. Say if there's 8 people that are interviewing you,
Yeah,
you could just, as someone's introducing who they are, you could write down their names in order, and that could help you address them by saying their name, because you've
absolutely.
written it down in order. So yes, I do encourage you to bring a notebook. Again, not a notebook, but a nice professional binder. So
Yeah, you're not going to sit down and go, okay, and I just to add,
yeah,
Amber, there's nothing wrong with when the person who sends you the invite to the interview, there's
yes,
nothing wrong with even sending a follow-up email to them and saying, would you be so kind as to let me know how many people will be on the interview panel, as I
yes,
want to be prepared? Would it be okay to take notes? Would it be okay to have my resume visible during the
yes,
interview? Should I need to refresh my memory at that moment? There's nothing
right,
wrong with that. I would say, based on my own experience, that no, you can't. I've never seen where you can just flat out have a book open and read with. So you want to try and memorize as much as possible. But again, we're talking about being authentic, right? So what
right,
you're talking about and what you're answering should be things that you're fairly comfortable with. And I
right,
can't tell you enough about practicing. That
right,
if you practice, 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 practice,
right,
you'll be fine. If you go in with the mindset of what's the worst that can happen,
Right.
what's the worst that can happen? You're just going in, and if you just go in with that peace, you got to protect your peace. So you got to pray before it. You know what I mean? You got to do whatever it is that you do before meeting someone important or interviewing. Do that so that you can be calm,
Right. So Natasha brings a good point, talk about being confident. If you look in my book, it talks about, putting on something that makes you confident. So whether it's a necklace that belonged to another family member, this is a tip I'm giving out. Before you go into an interview, I mentioned undergarments, putting on a new pair of undergarments before you go for an interview. So there's many things that you can do. I know, people laugh, but you know what? Whatever it takes to make you feel right, to make you feel confident, to make you feel, good in that interview, I say do it. So if it's undergarments, a new pair, or has some words on it, be confident. Whatever it is, do it. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm just saying.
It's true.
I'm just saying out there. So thank you all for joining me. Thank you to my guest, Natasha Boudry. She has done an amazing job of answering these questions just spot on. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. You are amazing. I just want to say that, I don't know, Natasha, if someone has, further questions, I'm going to give out my email, and I will say email them to me, and then Natasha and I can respond to you. I don't know if she wants to give out her email address, but what I will do is, if you have any further questions, you can reach me at Dr. T, DRT, JACQUES@gmail.com. And if you have any more questions for Natasha, both of us can answer them and get them to you. I mentioned a few days ago that I was going to be, besides the drawing, that I was going to be giving away a prize. And, as I was thinking, like, what kind of prizes, could I offer tonight? I want to say that, Amber, I see your questions. You were so engaged in this. I hope Amber is still on. Send me a yes, I'm still here. But Amber, I want to say, email me. That's the prize of the night. Email me, Amber, and I want to talk to you about job coaching. What can I do for you, Amber? Can I, talk to you through whatever job is or whatever you're trying to achieve? I don't know who you are, Amber, but email me, give me your information, and I think that you and I should talk. So that is the prize. That's the first prize of the night. That, Amber, you asked so many questions. You won that round. That's right.
It. So congratulations, Amber.
Right. And thank you to everybody that joined us tonight. There are many people on here. I don't want to, give individual shout outs, but thank you to you all for joining us tonight. Fruitful Vision Enterprises. Like us on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel, like us on Facebook, like us on Instagram. We are there for you. We are there to help you through this job process. So in the meantime, email me. You have my email if you have any questions. I'm going to draw a name out of my bowl. Let's see who's going to get the copy of my book. And even if you have it, I will send, if you have supported me, I will send it to you, and maybe you can just pay it forward to somebody else.
Awesome.
The name that I pulled is actually a guy's name who shared this. It is David Hippolito Jr.
Get out!
So we will make sure that David gets his book, and maybe he can pass it on to a woman, or he can read it himself, because there is tips in there for so my email is drtjacques@gmail.com. And if you have any questions, again, anything, you can always send me a direct message on Facebook. I check that as well, since we're all on Facebook, if you didn't catch my email. But listen, thank you all so much. I am who I am because of the people who support me. So thank you for tuning in tonight. If you have any ideas or anything that you want to see on future girl chats, let me know. Put some comments in, send me an email. I am here for my viewers, my audience, and I want to make sure that you are well informed. So again, thank you so much for joining me. Have a great night.
Thank you.